Okay. I'd like to begin with a somewhat provocative statement, and I would like you to raise your hand if you agree with it. The statement goes like this. Liberty is the most important value. I would support policies that protect liberty even if they produced inferior economic results because they would still be morally right. I say yes to that. How about you guys? Okay. That's a lot of hands in the air, but here's the great news for hands up people and hands down people. We don't have to choose between what's morally right and what's economically efficient. When we embrace the ideas of liberty, we get both. And this is particularly important when you get outside of this room, because in this room we got a lot of hands up people, right? But you go to other rooms and we are rather scarce. In most rooms you find the shrug people who are well-intentioned, but they just don't care about liberty in the abstract the way that many of us do. They wouldn't read a Friedrich Hayek book if you paid them to do it. And that's our challenge. But we have to remember that these people are still worth talking to because these people care about fairness, they care about what helps the poor, and they can be our allies. And that's what this talk is about this morning. I want to get you excited about a new campaign that Atlas Network has launched called Doing Development Differently, that you can visit at the URL you see on the screen. We see three big trends converging that give us an amazing opportunity to build new alliances to tackle poverty by increasing freedom. Trend number one. I think it's becoming increasingly well understood that there are limits to the effectiveness of old strategies concerning how you fight poverty. Direct aid can only do so much. It is the classic give a man a fish strategy. And it's important when there's an emergency to have that kind of relief. But if you're actually talking about breaking the cycle of poverty, breaking the cycle of dependency, it doesn't help, and it may even be counterproductive. So there's lots of organizations that say, I know that proverb, I'm not going to give a man a fish, I'm going to teach a man to fish. But there's limits to that strategy as well. And the more that I've thought about it, I've come to the conclusion that it's misguided and kind of patronizing. The problem in poor countries is not that there's a talent deficit. It's not that there's a know-how deficit. The problem is a lack of economic rights for the poor. And the people that are in poverty today, the vast majority of them, would be able to lift themselves out of poverty if there were not barriers to enterprise all around them. We know this now, and this is trend number two. There's increasing evidence to confirm and even quantify what many of you in the room already suspect, that when you implement reforms that remove the barriers to enterprise, as a consequence, you see poverty rates fall. It was a week ago today that the World Bank published its latest edition of its Doing Business report, a report that measures how easy it is to start a business, to conduct business in a country. And the latest edition of the report includes a finding from research that was commissioned by Atlas Network this past year, which now quantifies it. If you improve by 5 percentage points on the Doing Business report, you can expect that there will be a 1 percentage point decrease in poverty rates as a consequence. And keep in mind that this is not just a one-time blip that you can expect to snap back. This is a change in the trajectory on poverty. When you improve institutions, you get lasting improvement, and this is an idea that I think everybody should be able to get behind. But there is a complication. Outsiders who have tried to go in and import good governance in different countries have often made a mess of things. They've been very humbled, often unleashing lots of unintended consequences because they don't have the tacit knowledge of what the downstream effects are going to be of the reforms that they're proposing. My colleague Matt Warner calls this the outsider's dilemma. So how do we overcome the outsider's dilemma? This gets me to the third trend I want to talk about. And the third trend is all about the people in this room. We see an increasing level of talent, an increasing level of demonstrated effectiveness, and an increasing amount of ambition from the partners that come together at forums like our Liberty Forum. Our team keeps track of the policy victories that are being won by the 475 plus partners in our network. And currently, there's a rate of about one significant policy victory that moves the needle on economic freedom every single month. When we looked at a cohort of grants that we did with the goal of moving the needle on economic freedom from a couple of years ago, there are 29 grants. 10 of them have produced policy victories to date. And when you do the math using that World Bank ratio, you come up with a number like this: 405,000 people moving out of poverty as a consequence of those 10 reforms. We spent a little under $2 million of our donors' money on that entire cohort of grants, not just the ones that produced the victories. And you do the math here, and $4.88 to provide an opportunity that allows someone to lift himself or herself out of poverty. We got to scale this up. Less than $5 to provide that opportunity. That can be an applause line, sure. And what's really exciting about it is that we overcome the outsider's dilemma, because this project is not about me or my colleagues on the Atlas Network team, amazing though they are. This project is all about you. We don't know any better than Jeffrey Sachs what the priorities ought to be in your countries. But we do have the humility to know that the answers are actually out there with you, who are totally capable of coming up with what we talk about in our office as locally grown solutions to poverty. That's what we want to empower. So the project here at Atlas, Doing Development Differently, seeks to double down on a strategy that we see is already producing results. So I'd like you to visit atlasnetwork.org/poverty to learn about the Doing Development Differently project, including a grant opportunity that we're expanding as a consequence of the results that we've seen. You'll also be able to read stories there that fill in this picture of how think tank work can have this amazing effect of actually lifting people out of poverty, or rather allowing themselves to lift themselves out of poverty. I see this as an amazing opportunity for our movement to expand its impact, because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter whether you're one of the people that wants to raise their hand for the moral case for liberty or the pragmatic efficacy case for liberty. As we see it, the big project for all of us is simply more hands up to support the work that you're doing all over the world. So thank you very much.